Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us once again. I cannot wait to introduce you to our guest this week. But before I do, I want to thank some folks that we always thank. We always thank brassandwinds.com for their kindness to us. Brassandwinds.com is the place we go when we're looking for brass and wind instruments, new and used. We can't recommend them highly enough, and we thank them for all their kindness. We are Willow Music, formerly Grant Park Academy of the Arts. We are the next generation of music instruction, and we have instruction in all sorts of instruments, including the piano, the guitar, drums, trombone, saxophone, voice, just about anything you can think of. We're currently not seeing people live because of the pandemic, although we will soon. We can see anyone in the world via Zoom, and we look forward to helping you with that. If you are too shy to study with a person, then you can work with us at our website, TruerMU, which I can't seem to get to all of a sudden. TruerMU, TRUERMU.com, where you're free to take a video class on basic jazz improvisation taught by me. And if you're interested in that, you can visit us right here at TruerMU. There we are. All right, that's enough self-promotion. I want to give you a little background before I introduce our guest. Thank you. So, folks that know me know that I am a huge Billy Joel fanatic. And as part of my Billy Joel addiction, I joined a very, very great community on Facebook called Billy Joel Completely Retold. And one of the lucky things about being part of this community is I got to know a really terrific guy named Rhys Clark. Rhys Clark is a drummer who worked with Billy Joel on two of his albums, Cold Spring Harbor and Piano Man. And he was willing to come talk to us today. Now, before I introduce him to you officially, I'm going to give you a little background. Billy Joel is just one piece of what he's done. He's been a session drummer for a group called the Silhouettes, and they produced a big hit called Theme from Endless Summer. He's worked with Captain Beefheart, Hoyt Axton, Freddie Fender, Charlie Rich, all sorts of people. He's basically a high-profile session drummer that's just done great work for us all through the years. Rhys Clark, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me in there, Adam. Nice to be here with you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I want to separate this interview into basically three parts: before Billy Joel, and after Billy Joel, so we can talk about your whole career. And I also want to talk some about just being a drummer and being a session player. So let's start with your background before you got to Billy Joel. Before we start geeking out about Billy, we'll talk about what you did first.
Well, I first got into drums at about 5 years old because there was a snare drum in the music period that just drew me right in, and I never got over it, Adam. So fast forward to about 1966, after playing with the Silhouettes and recording, as you said, Endless Summer and stuff, I decided to pursue drums in a professional way. So that meant that I could go to Australia because obviously with more population, there's more work, etc. So I did that. And I got lucky. I joined a band called The Executives there, and they were looking to get a record deal. And in 3.5 years, we had a bunch of hit records and got the opportunity to come to Los Angeles, to the big sky pie. And so we came to Los Angeles in 1969, 70, and we settled in. We got a record deal right away. Record deals were pretty easy to get, actually. I mean, from our point of view, they were, I know that competition's always tough, but at that time, it wasn't too difficult once you established yourself a little to be able to get a deal. So we started doing an album, and we had to change our name from The Executives to In a Sense. It took a long time to get completed. And so I started doing other little projects, demos and stuff with people. And this was all under the umbrella of Family Records. So the producer got me to listen to some songs by this New York singer-songwriter. And I listened to a demo of 7 songs. And the next week, he brought this fellow out to Los Angeles who signed a deal with his label, and I got selected to be the drummer. And a partner in recording, Don Evans, he also got elected to play guitar and stuff. So we met Billy Joel at Record Plant West, and shook hands and introduced each other, and went, hey, let's do an album. And Billy immediately got on the piano and launched into Joe Cocker's version of The Letter. And that's how we started playing together. We did the album. Billy went back to New York so that the album could be completed in LA. And that at that point, Billy was looking to put a band together to go on the road. And so he gave me a call and said, would you like to go on the road? And I said, yeah. I said, I've been in Los Angeles for, 15, 18 months and haven't played live. And that's what we were trying to do. After you do the album, you go on the road and promote it. So I said, I'd love to. So I flew out to New York and got together with Billy, and he very kindly let me stay at his apartment. And we put the band together for Cold Spring Harbor and started to tour from there. So that leads me to Billy, and I got to be with Billy for 4.5 years and playing the Piano Man album on Captain Jack, and went to a marvelous amount of places, places that I just was like pinch me moments. Here I am playing Carnegie Hall, and Lincoln Center, Avery Fisher Hall, and I'm going, this is just beyond fantastic.
In later records, when he's working with Liberty DeVito, Liberty and other members of the band, they supplied pieces of the arrangement. They helped him craft the songs together. It sounds to me like you were not asked to do that, at least on Cold Spring Harbor, but were given arrangements to play. Is that correct?
Yes, but it was both.
Okay.
What happened was what came first was us. Billy wrote the song. We got together as the rhythm section to record the rhythm track. And so what happened was Jimmy Haskell made the arrangement from us already doing the song.
Okay, so he got his ideas from you.
Yes, exactly. Because what he was going to be doing was he was going to be putting all the horns, what they call the sweetening of all the songs that the sweetening was applicable to. Jimmy needed, charts for all the horn players, the string players, and
all the things
all
you can hear if you get the original vinyl and not the CD itself, but the original vinyl.
Yeah.
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 And there are some really nice arrangements.
Yeah, exactly. And that's all Billy.
Yeah.
I mean, there was very, very little when we came in to do a song, Adam. There was little else to do other than come together on it and play a good tight rhythm track arrangement. It was all there. Billy, it was complete. And so, and one proof of that was after we'd done all the tracks, there was a moment there one afternoon where Artie said, um, "Billy, is can you write a song that will be kind of a conclusion to the album, because the album is pretty deep and it has a lot of darkness to it. So can you write a song perhaps that is kind of reassuring and uplifting, and give us an opportunity to to be able to move forward in an uplifting way." Okay, so that night Billy wrote a song. The next day I came into the studio and Billy was in the middle of recording it, and this was Got to Begin Again.
Right, the last song on the album. Right.
Yeah, and he'd written that overnight.
Neat. So you were asked for your input on these songs.
Yes, yeah, you because to begin with, your input is you're the chosen drummer, bass player, guitar player, second keyboard, and so yes, in any of the good people, um, they're trusting you, to give them the confidence that what you're contributing fits, works, and is well done and well played, etc. And so Billy is leaving that, that openness for you, to do your thing. And so he knows that he he trusted Artie too in the same way, right?
Hmm.
To guide his songs, and so um, that's my song, and hope you like it, and here we go.
At the end of the first recording, we were talking about how Billy was looking more for an organic sound as opposed to a hyper produced sound, as opposed to because in the late 60s and early 70s, there were a lot of highly produced records. That was the way it was done. And the
Right?
singer songwriter movement kind of pulled away from that to some extent.
Yeah. And well, how the pulling away had established itself was all the wonderful British wave bands, the Beatles, the Stones, and that evolution of not not needing production people, doing it yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But not quite doing it yourself to the extent that the punk movement would hit later. This was you were still doing it in a studio with arrangers, but it wasn't. The artist had an identity. It wasn't just a product at that point.
Right. Exactly.
Did you play on all the tracks on Cold Spring Harbor?
Yes, I did. Well, no, I'm sorry. Yes, I did. In when Artie took over the reins, one of the demos he kept. It was a track, "Why Judy Why."
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, no, sorry, no. That also was New York session players, but there was another song called "You Look So Good to Me,"
Right.
and that was a rhythm section with a wonderful drummer by the name of Denny Sywell,
Oh yeah.
and Artie kept that on the album.
Oh, okay. So you played
Yeah,
on everything except Why Judy Why and You Look So
and
Good to Me.
right, yeah.
You play on Cold Spring Harbor. What was the gap between when you played on Cold Spring Harbor and when you got the call, hey, want to come join me?
The gap was pretty quick. Um, Billy went back to New York after all the tracks were done, and left it to Artie to, do all the other things leading up to mixing and mastering, and Jimmy Haskell's sweetening of the certain tracks that he chose to sweeten. Um, and I think so. I think Artie would send Billy demos and representations of the tracks as they progressed, but I'm not sure. What I am sure of is that when Billy got the acetate of the final mix, um, he um, he and the roadie and his longtime friend Bob Romaine played it. Um, I wasn't there, so I asked Bob about this, um, and Billy looked at Bob and went, well, this is, this is this, and this is not good. And he actually did open the door and throw it out the door.
Oh, wow. So the anecdotal
Mm,
story of him throwing the record down the street like a
mm.
frisbee is true.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, and of course then, and of course in part of that is the legendary law about that they oscillated the album up for in mastering, and forgot to oscillate it back down, and and we were out touring now, and Billy's making wonderful fans who are eager to buy the album, and they're telling Billy they go to the record store after the concert and they can't find it.
Mm.
They can't buy it. And that became a second problem in terms of the distribution company, wasn't distributing.
Right. Yeah. So lots of problems, unfortunately, with what eventually became a very beautiful and well known album.
Yeah, I know it is. But those are some of the gambles of life where You know, you put a direction together on something, and you try and channel it to keep it going forward, and you know, and come out as a hit record, and everybody's happy. So it's it's not easy,
Right.
obviously. Um, when we first went on tour, um, Billy was, you know, contracted to do 35 minutes as the opening act. You know, that's what you got. So the wonderful thing was to see if we could achieve the Beach Boys audience giving us an encore in 35 minutes.
Is this in Atlanta that you were talking about?
There, and but he was more established in Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm talking in the very beginning.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, and so and so the idea was because the process was the opening act, you know, nobody knew. So the idea
Right.
was to, you know, to try and get through to Jay Giles' audience, the Beach Boys audience. You know,
That's a
yes, is
dangerous
a
game.
well,
Dangerous game to play.
it's a tough game.
Right.
It's a tough game, especially with Billy and his sensitivity. But you know what he was also tough with in his sensitivities was um, he he knew he had no problem in talking to the audience, no matter who. If it was, you know, an audience that there just was no way that he was a musical match for, you know, like Jay Giles
Right.
or Robin Trower, and you know this was a mismatch, and you know so well what are we going to do, you know, and what we all would follow Billy's lead was, yeah, we're going to take this on, and we're going to get some of you know those uh, Robin Trower fans. We're going to see if we can get some, and so we
By
would quite
talking
often,
to them.
yeah, but the communication,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what's on the MMR Sigma Sound, um, you know, re-release. It's Billy. You know, there was technical difficulty going on in so Billy, you know, he embraced it, went with it, and you know, continued to go. You know, hey, how you doing? Is you know, is that patched in yet? And there's even a recording from Memphis whereby there was some technical difficulties, and Billy came up spontaneously with a song called Difficult, that's how I'd say, Blues.
Yeah.
And he mimicked a blues singer. And we all chimed in and he made a song out of it.
That is also very instructive to folks today. That's still
Exactly.
something if you're trying to win an audience, you don't necessarily have to impress them to death. You can connect with them. And he used his
Exactly.
sense of humor. That's great.
Yes, he became a master of that. When we did the last encore at Mari Soul, it was, you know, the letter by Joe Cocker, and so Billy started out on piano, and then he came up to the front microphone, and you know, and started. And what happened was, the audience started to surge to the stage, Adam, and the reason apparently was they thought it was Joe Cocker. It was the most euphoric and the most frightening experience. Uh, the highs and the scariness were kind of equal in their intensity. And so what happened was you know, the anticipation of doing our first festival was incredible. We played the night before we flew there in Miami. We opened for the Beach Boys at the convention center in Miami, and then the next morning we flew to Puerto Rico, and the excitement and anticipation of a 3 day festival, and we were part of 32 acts, you know,
Right.
and all the trimmings of a Woodstock, right?
Yeah.
So the euphoria came where we were getting ready to go on, and we were slotted for 6 p.m. on the second day of the 3 days. And so that slot was a really nice luck moment for Billy because it was a sweet spot to to be in the basically on the schedule, the very center of the whole 3 days. So you've already got a day and a half of people's attention with all the wonderful acts, and so now and we were following a band called Stonehenge. Okay, and so so they had some regional success
Hmm.
themselves. So we got set up, and it started to rain, and it was a typical tropical afternoon downpour. They didn't have any roofing at all. So it was like a Woodstock moment when that storm blew in Woodstock and, started to make major risks. And so we're actually sitting ready to start and we're being rained on by this tropical rain. And my floor tom was kind of like very level, so it started gathering water, and so I started hitting on it and making all this wonderful shower of rainwater, which later on in life became the Blue Beat Man in Vegas. Anyway, so that had that effect. So we couldn't start. They decided that somebody got a little shock from the microphone,
Yeah,
and
right.
okay, so we better back off. So we got down off the stage, and they set about putting up plastic and tarpaulins as best they could, and rearranging it and so forth. And then okay, we're good to go. So we came back up, but see, wonderful thing here is the audience is they're experiencing all this false start and the rain, and so they're acting like they did in the that storm in Woodstock, whereby they're just rollicking in the mud and the rain and everything, and so when we started, therefore, um, we had their immediate attention. Right
Yeah.
right from the first note, they were now glued to the stage and what was going on. So in that respect, um, we Billy had already gained, the attention of the the 30,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Just through this event. And what happened was, therefore, the 35 minutes that we were supposed to perform, it actually ended up being an hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you know what I'm saying? It was very beneficial. It played it played into Billy's attention getting.
Now, you
And
guys were already starting late. Did you just go
yeah,
ahead and nobody said, look, you guys got to get off now, or they just let it go? Or,
no, no, let it go.
wow, that's
They let
great.
it go. We did our 30 minutes, and then like a lot of the other shows we did, where Billy is the unknown, the underdog. We waited to see what would happen here with the 30,000 people here, and um, we finished with Captain Jack or Tomorrow's Today. Um, we went off the stage, and Adam, they started to pick up the applause, and it started to grow, and it grew to a wonderful moment where, whoa, we let's go and do another song. We left the stage with a wow, we really got on top of this one, and they loved it and loved Billy and all of us. And then for me, I got a little extra bonus of euphoria. This wonderful drummer came up to me, and I knew who the next band was. And he said, I like the sound of your drums, and they sound really good. And would I be able to play them? And I said, absolutely, because this was Alan Dawson, and he was playing with Dave Brubeck.
Oh, wow.
So for me, it was like, whoa.
Yeah. Was this just, and you were playing so much, I'm sure at the time, was this just another great concert, or was it a watershed concert, do you think?
Well, it was the only festival we ever did,
Hmm.
and so it was a one-off from that point of view. But it was important for Billy, because it gave him a chance to, be on the schedule with major acts to their fans and audiences, and get a foothold for himself, and he did. He got written up as out of the 32 acts, he got written up as one of the amazing, successful, non-known acts. They
Yeah.
they talked about seven acts who were unknown, who really came across.
Had Piano Man come out yet at that point?
No, it was all called Spring Harbor,
Right, right. And
1972.
but you were doing Captain Jack, so you were doing a couple
Yeah,
tunes that would eventually
yeah,
land on Piano Man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Billy wanted me to play on the track Captain Jack, and so
And you did.
yes, yeah. I came in, and uh, Billy's now given me an opportunity to be shoulder to shoulder with major amazing icons who I would never have dreamt I would come together with. The bass player Wilton Felder, and Michael O'Marty, and of course the major arranger Richard Bennett, who was a major recording session name and on acoustic guitar. Mike Deasy on lead guitar. I think it was Mike. And Adam, I'm in this wonderful euphoria again. Being a little intimidated, but trying to control my intimidation to perform. And
Yeah.
so yeah, and we actually did a pass at Billy the Kid as well, but when it came time to judge, they went with Ron Tutt's version of Billy the Kid, and so
Do you
so
have
I
a version with you on there?
no, like millions of tapes and so forth. It's like I don't know if there is one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
The tape they tape over them, or legally it's locked up legally, like all of Family Productions is locked up legally.
Right.
And what Billy went through in terms of getting Cold Spring Harbor back.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So in 1983, what Billy had to go through. Otherwise, so consequently, it's in my mind. It's still my performance on
Yeah.
Billy the Kid.
Yeah. That's a rough tune. It's a very
Oh, it's a wonder.
complicated.
Oh yeah, and that was part of the wonderful challenge. When I compared Billy to Elton John, Elton was very wonderfully smooth grooved, um, and open and beautifully simple. Whereas Billy, yeah, you had to concentrate on a lot of difficult things in arrangements
Yeah.
as to what to come up with, because Billy could really play all those songs by himself, and there is just a lush amount of musicality and vocals going on already. So you really have to pick your spot.
Yeah, and that song is one of the most complicated of his songs.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
very long and it's arranged
yeah.
for it's a beautiful orchestral arrangement in that song, and there's tons of hits. Ba 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 ba.
Yep,
Dum bum bum. You can't
yeah,
just keep a
yeah.
four to the floor on that thing. So you've played on a track of Piano Man. You get to play Captain Jack, maybe the best
Yep.
track on the album, and
Well, thank
then
you.
you're back on the road with Billy.
Yep, back on the road, and now uh, we have Don Evans on acoustic and electric guitars, and so Don and I are the continuing foundation band, to which Billy adds a bass player by the name of Patrick McDonald, and a, a fifth wheel, and the fifth wheel turns out to be Tom Dunstan, or Tom Whitehorse, as his stage name goes. And Tom was he's on a couple of the Street Life tracks.
Okay.
All right.
Playing
So
what? Playing.
he's playing pedal steel and banjo.
Got it.
Yeah. So banjo on Traveling Prayer, and pedal steel
Oh
on
yeah.
some of the other songs. And the basic band is Don, myself, and Patrick on bass, and Tom. So we go out as that configuration, and that was a wonderful moment too, because now the other songs that we're going to do from Piano Man, etc. Now Tom has to add, some pedal steel. So he's giving some of the songs like Billy the Kid a different flavor,
Yeah.
because pedal steel is now playing leads on Billy the Kid and stuff like that.
And you may be
You
able to
know?
hear some of that on the Songs in the Attic album then.
Yeah, you could. I mean, there's obviously one tape that's out there of a live concert is a live concert in Memphis, and
Mhm.
that's out there floating around, and so gave us opportunity to hear how we, we sounded as a unit with this kind of different pedal steel and banjo,
Yeah, right. But
and
which are used so effectively on the albums too, very effectively.
oh yeah, yeah. Michael Stewart did a really good job. It was just um, it was just still that one element that Billy didn't have yet, and that was the band that went on the road was desirable to be the band on the tracks.
Right,
He still was in the production mode of Michael Stewart being, the decision maker on the picking of the songs, therefore the production deal that Billy signed with him. And
right.
so he wasn't there yet. See what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Those two albums, he still wasn't basically in control
Yeah.
because, and it was always a frustration to have to deal with, you know, I want to use the band, but still can't get there yet.
Yeah. Now, the band that he ended up using on his first album, where he got to use the band, bears no relationship to this band that we're talking about.
No, no.
So, how do we get from you guys to Turnstiles, in which he's using all these East Coast musicians?
Right. How we get there is um, we, uh, I guess they decided The Entertainer as a single and therefore the Street Life album was starting to plateau, as Billy put it. Okay. And which meant that he was now, as he said one time, he said, I'm kind of right now at a level of Dave Mason, and therefore um, the momentum has plateaued. So I, I'm, I need to get the momentum back to keep moving up.
Right.
Yeah. Now I'm not moving down, but I'm not moving up. I plateaued.
Dangerous
And
place. Yeah.
yeah, so now you have to readjust and change the shape of the amoeba accordingly and hope that that will work. So what Billy did was um, he and Elizabeth uh, decided to move back to New York on downtime from touring, and Billy had and Elizabeth had my wife Marilyn and I over for dinner one night, and he said, we're moving back. He said, Hollywood, it's not for me. And yeah, it was always that way because Billy is such a wonderful, staunch, born and raised New Yorker and totally in support of his hometown. And he said it in his writing and so forth. And I'm a New Yorker, and he would let people know just how much of a New Yorker he really is. So
Yeah.
consequently, yeah, Hollywood was Hollywood, and it was like when trying to write songs, and then there'd be a knock on the door, and there'd be a plumber to fix something, and then the plumber would start to talk to Billy, knowing who he was, and say, I got the song. Can I get my guitar? Swap it for a wrench and play you my so because everybody, it's the way it is, and
Right.
and so so he was it wasn't his place, and so he and Elizabeth moved back, and they got a place up the Hudson there, rented a place, and Billy continued writing, and now he's back home now. So what he did then was um, so what he did was he then set about putting the new band together. And by the way, the one bass player who was, I forgot to mention, because Pat McDonald was only there for just a couple of tours. Then Billy replaced Pat with Doug Stegmeyer.
Oh, okay. So Doug
Yeah,
came in midway.
yeah. So now Doug was in the West Coast band, so to speak,
Hmm.
um, for a good year. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and therefore he's also on those live performances, and he's also on the live performance at Bert Sugarman's midnight special. That Doug's on that, and so consequently, Doug was Billy's lead person for putting players back together in New York and putting the New York band together because he also wanted
Ah,
a New York players. He still didn't have New York players, and so he Doug said, "Well, I've got I'm in a local Long Island band called Topper, and Liberty DeVito is the drummer, etc., and Russell Javers, I believe, and Richie Canada.
right.
Okay, were in that band. So Doug brought those wonderful players to Billy, and Billy went with that, and they did versions of the songs that were the current ones like New York State of Mind, etc., James, etc. Um, and Billy compiled an album himself called Turnstiles. And
Well, this
so,
gives
yeah,
new meaning to the name of the album, Turnstiles, because it really was
yeah,
a train
it,
crossing over.
it was a transition. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and Billy obviously he did the same thing. He went to it on it, and so used those, used Doug and Liberty and Richie and uh, Richie and Russell, etc. And so Phil Ramone, it transitioned to Phil Ramone, and they did the Stranger album. And Billy now had his comfort place.
Right.
He had great songs, but he also had a community of support musicians who came from bands and had that same sensibility, and they were all excellent level players on their given talents and instruments. And so um, when I first heard the Stranger album, Adam, I listened to it with great anticipation as to, well, this next move, this next record move of Billy's, how's it going to be? I I've got a fairly good clue of being able to judge it, uh, experiencing Billy for 4.5 years myself, and what I went through and all the goods and the bads and so forth. But the goods were euphoric levels, like I said, and so um, I didn't get far into the tracks, right from the Stranger track, and went, "This is goosebump time.
Yeah.
This is so good." Billy's gotten his way. He's gotten a producer who, he knew um, he could have an excellent marriage rapport with, and that the main ingredient being that he will use the players that is my band. And for me, I don't, nobody else would get this because I'm coming from my own experience. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I
And
do.
and 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 so I heard it right from the Stranger and the whole album, and it was just unbelievably great. And the unbelievable part is it was really wonderfully believable because he'd achieved what he what he was trying to do all along with
You,
him and his band.
well, I have to admire your attitude. It's immensely professional. Was there no
Yeah,
sense of loss or jealousy or anything in being replaced in this way?
I'd gotten over that.
Oh, so you did
Sure.
feel it
Oh
initially.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Heck yeah. I'm sensitive, and it. I knew that things weren't the same anymore at a certain point, and it was between Billy and I. Um, you know, I feel I felt that as a friend, uh, he wasn't my friend, and I needed to, uh, I needed to deal with that and come to him and ask him if he was still my friend.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I knew that having to ask him if he's still my friend meant really that we've had a distancing here.
Yeah. Was that while you were on the road with him, or was that
Yeah,
after the? Yeah. So you could already feel it, and you
yeah,
could feel that he was dissatisfied with the band as it was, and you knew there was a change coming.
yep. And
Yeah.
I hoped it wasn't. Though, I suppose after a month or two in upstate when Billy Elizabeth moved up the Hudson there, I called him um, and because the phone had been silent, as in silent telephone with Rosalinda,
Right.
and and so we talked, but he he maintained a level of he was still in the process of getting it together, but he never said that I was not a part of it.
Right.
He just said, well, we need to get a did get this played, but I knew that no, he would probably already have gotten the Liberty and the other players already, and because he's got to he's got to move on,
Right. So you could
and
your
yeah,
professionalism was such that you could read the writing on the wall, essentially.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, so I remember in Memphis at a moment of anxiety and going, I need to, I just need to talk to Bill before tonight's concert. We were back at the hotel getting ready, and I went and knocked on his door, and he didn't answer, and I kind of got the inkling from not answering. So I knew he was there. I knew he was in his room, and I knew that my opportunity, was at that moment, um, and so anticipating what was probably a reality was just something I had to deal with, and so when it came time now to, I knew the Turnstiles album, but I didn't have it. So I knew that it would have been a compilation that he kind of had to put together to give the record company product.
So you were playing with him after the Turnstiles album came out. You were still on
No,
the road.
no, no.
Oh,
That was the transition point.
I
Yeah,
see. I see.
yeah.
So
That was so that was between 75 and 76.
okay. So the tour
All
for the
right.
Turnstiles album included the new band then.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Okay.
so, yeah. So, and then at that point, it was, you know, just waiting to get the final key ingredient and a major ingredient, and that was Phil Ramone.
Yeah.
Just
Well, go ahead.
no, so to steer it and pilot and 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 the one ingredient that was really strong in comparing, the previous um, producers was that uh, Phil Ramone was hugely comfortable within his own abilities to produce, that he knew that he could just let this thing do its own thing, and he
Yeah.
would just help guide it, but he didn't need to do very much anything other than deliver it in its beautiful raw form.
Right. Or occasionally, put his foot down and insist that a different sax player play on just the way you are.
Well, did he do that?
Oh
Are
yeah,
you
yeah. That,
okay? All right.
that's Phil Woods.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So he would
Yeah, yeah.
occasionally.
So yeah, yeah. So because I'm coming from um, uh, not having to think about the Stranger album and think beyond what I knew from my experience with Billy
Right.
and association and personal life, that he'd achieved it. So from that point on, I didn't have to worry about it anymore, because I also moved on into other musical situations, and it was just so undeniably good that I knew that this was this was the album that would now get him over the complete global and universe top, and it's all wonderfully natural. And he tried to maintain that throughout, and he finally achieved it. And so when it came to now the nuts and bolts behind the scenes of how the tracks all went down in that evolution, for me it was just Billy's and Phil's right moves were that they maintained Doug and they maintained uh, Liberty.
Yeah. Did you
And
have
I knew
conversations with Liberty?
we've met a couple of times. Yes, I met Liberty in on Long Island. We did a concert at Hofstra University, and Liberty came. And of course, Liberty would have been coming because of his connection with Doug. And
Right.
so Doug Stegmeyer is the wonderful bass player. And so, yes, afterwards, we went to a late night diner and all sat together. And I'm sitting there across the table here is this drummer who I know is Doug's band. And he's bearded and he's got kind of an afro. And I believe maybe at the time um, he was available.
Yeah. What do Billy Joel's two drummers talk about? That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, so it for me it was intimidating, and but however we exchanged the pleasantries and all that, um, and so the next time we did Staten Island, and we did a university concert in Staten Island at a college, I believe, and Liberty came there too, and I saw him come in the entrance right out the other end of the auditorium, and went, oh, Liberty's here again.
Well,
And so we hung out afterwards and exchanged pleasantries as much as two drummers in that scenario could,
okay.
and left it at that. So the next time that I heard Liberty playing was his drum tracks on The Stranger, and I was elated because I knew that you know I didn't know his playing because I didn't kind of take any notice of the turnstiles material. So I'm kind of hearing The Stranger complete and for the first time. It's a virgin listening. So what what Liberty's contributing here is just as powerful a talent on drums as Billy is at vocalizing, piano, and songwriting. And so
That's a very
it,
generous thing to say. That's really neat.
it was euphoric. I was really happy. Now it it stayed at that limit though,
Sure.
and so the nuts and the bolts from then on was such that it was going to be uh, such a happy thing to see the basic foundation after instruments after the piano is the important ones, drums and bass, because that's the rhythm section basically. I mean, with guitar, yes, but in this scenario where you have piano as the lead rhythm instrument, bass and drums are the next, wives in the marriage.
Right.
And I knew that Bob Romaine had once told me that Billy always liked to have a strong drummer. He always liked the association of being with a strong drummer. So I felt good to hear that because John Small and Liberty DeVito, strong drummers.
And
And
there you
that's,
are in that company. Yeah.
yeah. And so, yeah, so I was fortunate enough to kind of rub some shoulders with them. I never met John, but I knew also powerful drummer, and I knew that from Attila,
Right.
and I knew that from You got me humming, or from the single from the Hassles.
Right.
Yeah, and Billy knew that too because from the Hassles, Billy got into starting to write songs and went with the Lee Michaels concept, and it was John, and therefore, between what he had to do on piano and what John had to do on drums, you had a lot of space and air to fill, and so John had huge capabilities of doing that really well, and so I was glad to see that Billy maintained Liberty and Doug throughout, and uh, rest easy, Doug. It was a tragedy to me to, I asked Jeff Ward, Jeff Shop at one point. Jeff Ward was the manager of the executives that became In a Sense, um, Helen Reddy's husband. Um,
Oh,
and so I said to Jeff, what happened with Liberty? I mean, with Doug, because I know that it was a tragic thing. I knew that Doug had a studio. And anyway, it was it just got difficult in the way that usually it does in a longevity, recording and road situation. It gets difficult,
yeah.
and 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 it got difficult for Doug, and so
Difficult in that it affects your private life and choices you make. And
exactly, because the whole personal, it's a very very intimate personal life that you're living. It is, I mean, it's more intense to me than a marriage because it is a marriage.
right,
Yeah,
which can
and,
make it difficult for your partner.
but it's a whole industry called divorce.
Yeah. I have a Billy Joel question that I have always wanted to ask him and that I've never heard him answer in an interview. And perhaps you can shed some light on this. And it speaks to
Okay.
his sense of humor. I've noticed that on his records, it doesn't say side one, side two. It says one side, another side. Nobody's
Mm-hmm.
ever mentioned this before, but I wanted to know that
Oh.
seems like if that's a Billy decision or if that's somebody else's strangeness, because that's a very odd thing.
See, I don't think so. I think that's very natural.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But by
yeah.
odd, I don't mean that it's unusual that it shouldn't be there, but just that that seems like something that Billy would have done. Like
Yes,
like
and
he's always thinking about the other side, and there's always another side to the story, and I'm going to put this on the record.
yeah, and that's what it's from. Yeah,
Oh, so
and
you know for a
you
fact
know,
that's the case. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, because when it comes time to the packaging, for instance, well, Billy's got to make decisions on how the album is going to be packaged, and that becomes graphic artwork, etc. And the liner notes, what's going to be said, because this is making history here, or you hope it is. But
Right.
anyhow, but it's all part of the creating the album. The album jacket becomes part of the creation too, and which unfortunately CDs kind of made it very difficult to
True.
maintain that. Yeah, so in their creative process, um, Billy would have, someone might have suggested, or Billy, and Billy, and so instead of side one, side two, let's make it, one side and another side, because yeah, you can justify that by going, it can be one side of Billy and then another side of Billy.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
you see, and so those things are all part of the natural process of your creating. And Artie Rip, he had some of that in him too, you know.
Mhm.
And, uh, and so consequently, Billy, and that's kind of keeping it organic too, because it's, the record graphics department is going to come up with what they come up with. And of course, they are very much distanced from your personal endeavors here, that they have to, like a support player, they have to read it and come up with what they are perceiving, what they're getting from it, right?
Right.
And so that's a very deep distance to have to travel to come together and get close. That's the intimacy I'm talking about. Is what you as a musician bring to that song. Well, so the graphics department has to do the same thing with graphics. How you know, and so therefore you come up with these wonderful, quirky, double, triple meaning entendres. Um, and yeah, and somebody reacts like you just reacted, and you go, yeah, that person got my idea, and so you use it. And so Billy's done that all along with everything,
That's
and
great.
the major acts were also doing the same thing, and the artwork in that time period of vinyl that was huge in the music business, and especially the one that blossomed here in Hollywood in the '60s and '70s. Uh, the artwork became a whole nother dimension of it.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's a long-winded way around saying that, yeah, one side and another side, it's kind of, it's cute. But it's right. It's real.
Oh, thank you. Now I can sleep at
Yeah.
night.